Okay, this video is to go through and to help out with activity 2.2 perspective sketching this one actually is labeled number 2, and this particular drawing would be the third sketch for the activity. So in this scenario, students are asked to go through and to draw a 1-point perspective of this puzzle piece as we go along. So some things that we'll take a look at will be, you can set up some different scenarios to help you out with sketching this. And one thing that I'm going to take a look at is that first we need to establish a horizon line. So I'm using regular orthographic grid paper to go through and to draw this on. And then I've set up a vanishing point. And on this one here, we can kind of see where the vanishing point starts. And I'm going to kind of do the same exact one. I could set up the vanishing point no matter what. I could set it right in the center. I could set it over here at the right side. But I really recommend you to go through and to draw it in the same orientation that's being shown. So as far as this goes, I've gone through and I've outlined, what this object would look like inside of a glass box. So this particular object will go through and when it's enclosed. So one thing is that on the previous examples, they kind of gave you the outline of the box to work with, and that's kind of the issue, that we have to go through and set up right now, is what exactly and how do we do that? Well, to set up proportion, one thing is just kind of looking, I'm going to come down here a little ways, and I'm going to kind of set up maybe where I'd want to start my box. So I'm going to start, this will be the top left corner in this case. Well, for this object is longer than what it is tall. So what I'm going to do is kind of look at utilizing a grid to help me set up proportion just a little bit more. So one thing is, as far as the height, and what I've done is this is made up of the 3/4 inch cubes for the puzzle cube part. And I'm going to do probably about 3 grid squares wide and about 3 grid squares tall for each one of these cubes. So overall, I've got 1, 2, 3, and there are 3 grid squares for each one. So I'm going to get an overall width of 9, and then there's 1 and then 2. So it'd be 6 grid squares tall for it. So I'm going to go through and look at drawing this in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Set this up using my straight edge. I'll go through and draw that in. Again, looking at the width, 9, 3, 6, 9. Now we'll go through and set up the front part of my box here to go through and to draw this in. So, front part of my box gets drawn in, and that kind of, utilizing the grid will help us kind of maintain some proportion. So some things that I'll do, and as I set this up here, is I will go through first, and from each corner, line up to my vanishing point, and then go ahead and draw to each corner on the box. So, and just the 3 corners that we see that would connect in this case. So we don't want to do this bottom corner, so because otherwise you'll see that line running through the box, and we don't want to confuse anybody on that. But the next thing I need to do is I need to look at going through and putting in how deep it is, or the front to back distance. So on this one, if I was to look at this is 2 cubes, in depth. And when I look at this, so that would be 6, but if I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the object seems really elongated if I draw it back here. So what it comes to with perspective sketching is you kind of have to estimate the depth in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to limit it back down to 3. 1, 2, 3. And that looks pretty appropriate for what my depth would be in this case. So lightly draw that in, and now I get my box that I can go through and use to draw this shape in. From here, I'm going to look at seeing what kind of faces touch the outside of the box. So first thing is I see these 2 faces on the front, this side face, and then this top one will touch as well. I'm going to start with the 2 front square shapes to go through and to come up with on my box as well. So 1-point perspective, I'm going to go through, and as we put those in, I'll go through and I'll take a look at this object here as well. So from this corner back to the vanishing point, we'll go through and kind of look at drawing in this line, and it also allows me to set up and take care of some requirements. So I'm going to line up, draw to the corner, and have that show up as well. So just to kind of go through, I will darken in these edges with some nice dark object lines. so that way I can delineate the edges of the faces that I have here. And this will go through and kind of help keep the sketch from getting too busy or, looking a particularly confusing or anything like that. All right, so as I take a look at this shape, one thing that might help us out as well is I've got these two faces. Maybe I want to go through and enclose this. So, and it looks appropriate to do that. So I'll go through and take from this corner back to the vanishing point, light construction line to the corner, and then I will go through and look at what are some other things. So that right now, as we get to the interior, main thing is we need to look at are what corners or what lines connect to which corner. So since I have a construction line drawn in, I know that this corner here will need to go through and draw straight across to where that construction line connects. And from where it connects to this front corner, I'm going to go ahead and darken that in. So now you can see we've got this side already kind of filled in. Now here's where things get a little interesting. A lot of people, a lot of the students want to do this too. You'll want to go through and draw right back to the vanishing point on this other side. I'm going to recommend that since we're already got the left side done, let's continue to get the middle taken care of. So from this corner, I know, and on the drawing, I got to draw straight up until I hit the top of the box, which is back here. So I'm going to use a light construction line to draw up to, and even if I pass through the line a little bit, that's okay. And then I know I've got this corner here, which on this drawing is this corner corresponding. So from here to draw the depth, I'm going to set this up with a vanishing point, light construction line, and then I'll start to get this line to show up here. Now I don't know, and I don't have the corner kind of established of where I want to stop. And probably what I want to do as well is set up this back corner. So when I look, it's probably about a third of the way or so on the box. Same kind of scenario. Draw into the vanishing point, and then I can kind of look at, well, where do I want it to stop? About halfway on the box would be right about there, and then I can kind of look at kind of finishing this out and drawing this in. Now since from this corner goes down, I am going to, down through here, I am going to go through and connect down like so. So it looks like I did kind of mess up on my line there just a bit. Okay, so this we go through and we start to see this face comes in here, and then if I draw straight across from this point then to the other construction line, I will see that I get this top edge to be completed. Okay, it's drawing straight down from this corner. I'm going to draw straight down because I don't know really where exactly I need to stop, but I can always go through and look at this point here. So, utilizing my straight edge, draw these lines straight back, like construction lines as well, to go through and to help out with our part. Now the light construction lines are just there to help out as a guide. And as I go along, there's some things here that honestly, as I go through and sketch, I've actually maybe overshot the depth a little bit too much. So, and that's something that this is a good thing for students. And I did this to show, kind of your proportions and also how to correct a sketch when you go through and start drawing it. So in this case, instead of coming all the way out to here, I might just want to stop to right there. Draw my line straight down, repeat my process, and same kind of scenario. I'll draw this straight over, and then and actually I may be even too wide on my depth here as well. So I may just stop to be right about there. Draw my line in, and then go through and then connect over like so. So now, if I draw my line straight down, I'm starting to get this looking a little bit better. So a lot of times when it comes to students and working and everything like that, I know they tell you not to erase construction lines and points, but this one here kind of called for it. And it does look a lot better after I corrected it. Okay, so as I draw back to my vanishing point, I know I'm going to run right into this point here, and then I do have a little ledge that goes in from that corner. Same kind of scenario. draw back to my points that I darken these in really well to there, and then from here back, these do kind of hit at the same point in the back, so I'm going to kind of flatten him in the back, and that goes through and really kind of takes care of it. So, and again, you know, don't be afraid to go through and erase and try some things out. It does look a little bit different than what they have here, but it is a one-point perspective sketch. So maybe their where their vanishing point was placed is a little bit different than mine, but it is an accurate one-point perspective sketch. So, and that's kind of one of the things I like to stress to students as well, is that you go through and you have one-point perspectives, and that's why they call it perspective. It just depends on where your points are at, and mainly too how far and what kind of distance that you have away from that particular point as well. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. And from here, just go through and apply the proper tonal shading. So just kind of while I'm finishing up shading here, I will tell, you know, just kind of a few tips and tricks. Don't be afraid to have students go through and erase and stuff. You saw on mine, you know, sometimes, you know, you can fix a sketch just by a matter of changing some of the points and what you see with it as you go along. So, and since this is front, it gets a nice contrasting dark color. But fixing a sketch can be really easy. And a lot of times, what I noticed, and just like how I did, you know, I kind of caught it before I got to the end. And when things aren't looking right, you know, you need to stop and go ahead and correct it, just kind of like how I did. So then that way we get some nice, you know, looking sketches out of this as we go along. But this will go through and finish out and conclude number 2 on activity 2.2, or the third sketch in one-point perspective that the students will be drawing.